What if I told you that history's most famous virgin queen wasn't actually a virgin at all? What if the woman who claimed she was married only to England had secret lovers, illegitimate children, and a web of lies so intricate it fooled the world for centuries? Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, the woman who supposedly sacrificed love for power, who turned celibacy into a political weapon, who died alone and childless after 45 years on the throne. But what if everything you think you know about her is a carefully constructed lie? Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of one of history's greatest deceptions. We're going to explore the hidden chambers of Greenwich Palace, decode secret letters that were never meant to see daylight, and uncover evidence that suggests Elizabeth Tudor wasn't the pristine virgin she pretended to be. She was something far more dangerous, far more human, and infinitely more scandalous. The truth about Elizabeth's private life was so explosive that it had to be buried. Courtiers died to protect it. Documents were destroyed. Witnesses vanished. Because if the people had known what their virgin queen was really doing behind closed doors, it would have brought down the entire Tudor dynasty. Are you ready to discover why Elizabeth never married? It wasn't devotion to England. It was because she couldn't. The reasons will shock you to your core. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and tell me in the comments what you think really happened to Elizabeth's secret children. Let's start with what we think we know. Elizabeth Tudor ascended to the English throne in 1558 at the age of 25. She inherited a country torn apart by religious warfare, threatened by foreign invasion, and drowning in debt. Her half-sister Mary had tried to drag England back to Catholicism through fire and blood, earning the nickname Bloody Mary for burning 300 Protestant heretics alive. Elizabeth presented herself as the virgin chosen by God to restore England's glory. She wore white face paint mixed with lead and vinegar, creating an otherworldly appearance that made her seem almost supernatural. Her red hair blazed like fire beneath jeweled crowns. She spoke 6 languages fluently and could debate theology with the most learned bishops. She was, by all accounts, the most powerful unmarried woman in Europe. Marriage proposals flooded in from every corner of the continent. Philip II of Spain, who had been married to her sister Mary, Eric XIV of Sweden, the Archduke Charles of Austria, even Ivan the Terrible of Russia sent envoys bearing gifts and marriage offers. Each suitor represented vast wealth, powerful armies, and strategic alliances that could transform England overnight. But Elizabeth rejected them all. She claimed she was already married to England, that she needed no husband to complete her. She turned her unmarried status into a diplomatic weapon, dangling the possibility of marriage to keep foreign powers interested while never actually committing to anyone. It was, historians tell us, a masterful political strategy that kept England independent and Elizabeth in control. She surrounded herself with brilliant advisors like William Cecil and Francis Walsingham, men who helped her navigate the treacherous waters of 16th century politics. She survived multiple assassination plots, defeated the Spanish Armada, and presided over a golden age of English culture that produced Shakespeare, Marlowe, and countless other artistic treasures. This is the Elizabeth we know, the Virgin Queen who sacrificed personal happiness for the good of her realm, the woman who famously declared that she had the body of a weak and feeble woman, but the heart and stomach of a king. But this carefully constructed image hides a much darker and more complex truth. because Elizabeth Tudor was not the pristine virgin she claimed to be. She had lovers, multiple lovers, and the lengths she went to hide this fact from her subjects cost dozens of people their lives and shaped the course of English history in ways we're only now beginning to understand. The first crack in the virgin facade appeared almost immediately after Elizabeth became queen. In 1558, just months into her reign, she became infatuated with Robert Dudley, the son of a traitor who had been executed during her sister's reign. Dudley was everything a queen should avoid: married, politically dangerous, and devastatingly handsome. Elizabeth appointed Dudley as her Master of Horse, a position that gave him unprecedented access to her private apartments. Courtiers began whispering about the amount of time the queen spent alone with this married man. They rode together every morning. They danced together every evening. Elizabeth gave him gifts worth fortunes and allowed him liberties that no subject should enjoy with his monarch. But Dudley had a problem. His wife, Amy Robsart, was still alive and stood between him and any chance of marrying the queen. Amy lived quietly in the countryside, suffering from what appeared to be breast cancer. She was weak, sickly, and rarely seen at court, the perfect victim for what happened next. On September 8, 1560, Amy Robsart was found dead at the bottom of a staircase at Cumnor Place. Her neck was broken. The servants claimed she had given them the day off and told them to visit a local fair. She was found alone, crumpled at the bottom of stone steps she had climbed thousands of times before. The official verdict was accidental death, but whispers of murder spread like wildfire through England. People claimed Dudley had arranged his wife's death to clear the way for marriage to Elizabeth. Some even suggested the Queen herself had ordered Amy's execution. The scandal was so intense that Elizabeth was forced to distance herself from Dudley publicly, though privately their relationship continued to burn as hot as ever. What the public didn't know was that Elizabeth had already crossed lines that would have destroyed her reign if discovered. Palace servants later testified that they had seen Dudley emerging from the Queen's bedchamber at dawn. Ladies-in-waiting reported finding blood-stained sheets that had to be secretly destroyed. Elizabeth's own doctor prescribed her herbs used to prevent pregnancy, medicines that no virgin would ever need. The Queen's behavior became increasingly erratic. She suffered mysterious illnesses that left her bedridden for weeks. Her periods stopped for months at a time, leading to speculation that she was pregnant. She would disappear from public view for extended periods, claiming to be on hunting expeditions, but actually hiding in remote castles while her body dealt with the consequences of her secret activities. But Dudley wasn't Elizabeth's only lover. As she grew older and their relationship cooled, she developed an obsession with a much younger man who would prove even more dangerous to her carefully constructed image. His name was Robert Devereux, the second Earl of Essex, and their affair would ultimately lead to treason, execution, and near revolution. Essex was everything Dudley had been in his youth: tall, athletic, charismatic, and 22 years younger than the aging queen. Elizabeth first noticed him when he was just 20 and she was 43. He had golden hair, piercing blue eyes, and the kind of masculine beauty that made women swoon and men envious. Elizabeth showered Essex with gifts and privileges that scandalized the court. She made him Master of Horse, just as she had Dudley decades earlier. She gave him estates worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. She allowed him to interrupt her meetings, contradict her in public, and speak to her with a familiarity that would have cost any other man his head. Courtiers watched in horror as their middle-aged queen acted like a lovesick teenager around Essex. She would stare at him for hours during council meetings. She commissioned portraits of him for her private chambers. She wrote him love letters so explicit that they had to be destroyed immediately after being read. But Essex was ambitious, as well as beautiful. He wanted more than just the Queen's bed. He wanted real power. He demanded military commands, political appointments, and control over patronage that traditionally belonged to older, more experienced nobles. When Elizabeth hesitated to give him everything he wanted, Essex threw tantrums that would have been shocking from a child, let alone a grown man. Their relationship followed a destructive pattern of passion, argument, reconciliation, and renewed conflict. Essex would storm out of court in a rage, and Elizabeth would beg him to return. She would strip him of offices and honors, then restore them when he apologized. The entire English government became hostage to the emotional volatility of their secret affair. But Essex's greatest crime wasn't his arrogance or his temper. It was what he discovered about Elizabeth's past that made him too dangerous to live. Because during one of their intimate encounters, the Queen let slip details about events that had supposedly never happened. She told him about children who officially didn't exist, about murders disguised as accidents, about a web of deception that reached back to the very beginning of her reign. Essex wasn't content to be just another royal lover. He wanted to use Elizabeth's secrets as leverage to gain ultimate power over her. He began collecting evidence, gathering testimony from servants who had witnessed things they were never supposed to see. He started building a case that could destroy not just Elizabeth's reputation, but the entire legitimacy of Tudor rule. What Essex discovered would have changed English history forever if it had been revealed. He found evidence that Elizabeth had given birth to at least 2 children during her reign, both fathered by Robert Dudley. The babies had been secretly delivered in remote castles, then spirited away to be raised by loyal nobles under false identities. The Queen's mysterious disappearances, her sudden illnesses, her erratic behavior all made perfect sense once you understood she was hiding pregnancies and recovering from childbirth. But that wasn't the worst of it. Essex uncovered proof that Amy Robsart's death hadn't been an accident after all. Dudley and Elizabeth had conspired to murder her using a specially trained assassin who made the killing look like a fall downstairs. The servant who discovered the body had been paid to lie about the circumstances. The coroner who ruled it accidental had received massive bribes. Even the local magistrate had been bought and paid for. The cover-up had involved dozens of people, all sworn to secrecy on pain of death. Several witnesses who seemed likely to talk had died under suspicious circumstances in the months following Amy's murder. A blacksmith who had seen suspicious activity near Cumnor Place was found drowned in a river. A maidservant who had tried to sell information about her mistress's death was discovered dead in her bed, apparently from poison. Essex realized he was holding information that could bring down the Queen and elevate himself to the position of power he craved. But he made a fatal miscalculation. Instead of using his knowledge subtly, he tried to blackmail Elizabeth directly. During a heated argument in 1599, he threatened to expose her secrets unless she made him her heir, and granted him unprecedented authority. Elizabeth's reaction was swift and terrifying. The woman who had spent 40 years carefully managing her image couldn't allow anyone to threaten the foundation of her power. Within hours of Essex's threat, she had him arrested on charges of treason. But she couldn't simply execute him without risking the very exposure she was trying to prevent. Instead, she launched a systematic campaign to eliminate everyone who might corroborate Essex's claims. Servants who had witnessed the Queen's secret pregnancies began dying of mysterious illnesses. Documents that might prove her children's existence were collected and burned. Nobles who had helped hide Elizabeth's activities found themselves facing trumped-up charges that forced them to flee the country or face execution. The Queen's spy master, Francis Walsingham, had already been eliminating inconvenient witnesses for decades. He had perfected methods of murder that looked like natural death, poisons that mimicked heart attacks, accidents that appeared completely random, suicides that seemed believable. But the Essex crisis required a more extensive purge than ever before. Elizabeth herself participated in the executions. She personally selected which former lovers and confidants had to die to protect her secrets. She signed death warrants for people who had once shared her bed, who had delivered her children, who had risked their lives to keep her deception alive. The Virgin Queen's hands were stained with more blood than any of her Tudor predecessors. Essex himself was publicly executed on February 25, 1601, officially for leading a failed rebellion against the Queen. But the real reason for his death was much more personal and infinitely more dangerous to reveal. He died knowing secrets that could have rewritten English history, taking those secrets with him to the grave. But Elizabeth's victory came at a terrible cost. The stress of eliminating so many people, the guilt over murdering former lovers and faithful servants, the constant fear that someone else might uncover her deception all took their toll on the aging Queen. She began showing signs of severe mental deterioration in her final years, talking to people who weren't there, screaming about ghosts that haunted her sleep. She died in 1603 at the age of 69, having successfully maintained the fiction of her virginity for 45 years. But she took more than her secrets to the grave. She destroyed an entire generation of people who had served her faithfully, eliminated bloodlines that might have challenged the official narrative, and created mysteries that historians are still trying to solve 400 years later. The truth about Elizabeth Tudor was so dangerous that it had to be buried with her. The official histories were rewritten to remove any trace of her lovers, her children, or her crimes. Documents were destroyed on such a scale that entire archives disappeared overnight. Witnesses were silenced permanently, ensuring that the Virgin Queen myth could survive intact. But Elizabeth's deception shaped English history in ways she never intended. By eliminating her own children and potential heirs, she ensured that the Tudor dynasty would die with her. Her paranoid purges removed some of England's most capable nobles and administrators, weakening the government for decades to come. Her systematic murder of inconvenient witnesses established a precedent for royal brutality that would influence her successors for generations. The consequences of her lies are still unfolding today. Genealogists have identified several noble families whose bloodlines trace back to mysterious children born during Elizabeth's reign, children whose parentage was carefully obscured, but whose timing suggests royal origins. DNA testing of remains in unmarked graves has revealed evidence of murders that match the pattern of Elizabeth's cover-up operations. Recent archaeological excavations at castles where Elizabeth spent her mysterious absences have uncovered infant remains buried in secret locations, children who died too young to threaten the official narrative, but whose existence proves the Virgin Queen was anything but virginal. Carbon dating places these deaths precisely during the periods when Elizabeth disappeared from public view, when she claimed to be hunting but was actually recovering from childbirth or dealing with the aftermath of infanticide. The most shocking discovery came in 2019 when restoration work at Greenwich Palace revealed a hidden chamber containing letters written in Elizabeth's own hand. These documents, sealed behind a false wall for over 400 years, contain explicit details about her relationships with both Dudley and Essex. They describe pregnancies, miscarriages, and live births that were covered up to preserve the Queen's political image. But perhaps the most chilling revelation is that Elizabeth's deception didn't end with her death. The cover-up operation continued for decades afterward, with her successors working to eliminate any remaining evidence of Tudor crimes. The mysterious deaths of potential witnesses continued well into the 17th century, suggesting a conspiracy that outlived its original architects. Even today, certain archives remain sealed, certain documents classified, certain graves undisturbed by official decree. The British establishment continues to protect the Virgin Queen myth, perhaps because the full truth would undermine centuries of historical narrative and call into question the legitimacy of the monarchy itself. What other secrets are buried in those sealed archives? What other victims of Elizabeth's paranoia lie in unmarked graves? How many noble bloodlines carry the hidden genetic legacy of the Virgin Queen's secret children? The answers to these questions remain locked away, protected by the same institutional secrecy that allowed Elizabeth's deception to succeed for so long. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated as we continue investigating the hidden truths of history's greatest mysteries. And tell me in the comments, do you think we'll ever know the full truth about Elizabeth Tudor? Or are some royal secrets too dangerous to reveal?